Welcome to the Heart-Led Business Show, where compassion meets commerce and leaders lead with love. Join your host, Tom Jacobs, as he delves into the insightful conversations with visionary business leaders who defy the status quo, putting humanity first and profit second. From heartfelt strategies to inspiring stories, this podcast is your compass in the world of conscious capitalism. So buckle up and let your heart guide your business journey.
Well, step right in, folks. Buckle up, brace yourself, and beam on. We're about to bounce big ideas with Brett Dellar, a bright-hearted bloke who's beaten the blues and helped others do the same. This chirpy chiropractor and courageous cop-turned-coach will chime in about his charming, chock-full, and most cheerfully heart-led business. So welcome to the Heart-Led Business Show, where it's less of a punchline and more of a heartfelt storyline. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. That's an amazing introduction, the best one I've ever had. So thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome. Happy to have you on the show. And, I always ask the first question is, what's your definition of a heart-led business?
For me, a heart-led business is when your goal is to provide that positive support and impact into an individual's life that will have a ripple effect, not only for their life moving forward, but for those family, friends, community, colleagues as well around them. And based on what I do, I want to see it as a stepping stone, as a pole vault into them moving forward, so they can continue on that positivity for themselves and their lives, but also to almost pay it forward to others as well when they get to that space where they're in a really good space as well. So it's a momentum effect, I suppose.
Yeah, I like that. And it's a kind of a beautiful way of seeing the impact of your positive business, your heart-led business, not just in the person that you're seeing, but also what happens down the road, kind of that butterfly effect, so to speak.
And I've seen it a lot, working with the people we have in the past, that the change in not just the individual, but the relationship with their wife or husband, and then how that's impacted the children. It's that in itself is just beautiful to watch. And being a small part of that journey, seeing how they can change and how they can adapt and grow, and then pass it on to their children. I think that's really important, to break the habits of past generations and starting anew. That's where the real power is. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, well, it's generational at that point, which is really awesome.
Yes.
I was listening to another podcast about kind of that ripple effect, if you will, and just how you never know, and unless you look behind, like what that ripple effect was of those decisions that we all make, which is pretty cool.
I actually got on to mum and dad. I sat them down individually the other day and asked them, you see those reels come up, they say you should ask your mum or dad 7 questions before they go. And my mum and dad are both in their late 70s, early 80s now. And I sat them down in front of the camera, which they weren't comfortable with at all. And I asked them a series of questions. And one of the things was, what did you learn from your parents? And both of them, in a roundabout way, said, I learned what not to do. So they actually broke the cycle for me to make my journey much more smoother. So I'm very, very grateful for them doing. I knew that was the case, but for them to actually see that as well, that was quite powerful as well.
Wow, no, that's great. I did that with my parents as well, doing an interview. It's so powerful. It's so good to look back upon as well. So that's a really good thing you did. So tell us a little bit about your heart-led business and what inspired you to start it.
Well, I, along with my wife, we run basically personal growth, personal development, mentoring, life coaching, whatever you want to call it. And I'm still a chiropractor. I've been doing chiropractic work, studying and working as a chiropractor for 21 years now. But about 6 years ago, I got to the end of my tether when it came to my mental health. I struggled with depression for basically 30 years, and it controlled me. I never had I always faked energy, but I never had energy, if that makes sense. I pretended I was okay when I wasn't. And I'd go to work and I'd give all my energy out to my patients all day and hi, how are you? Great to see you. and none of it was real, but it was orchestrated a little bit. I'd come home, I'd be totally exhausted, and little things would trigger me. And all of a sudden I'd be in this deep, dark depression again. And this cycle, as from my 20s through to my last 50, the cycles would get deeper and more frequent. And I'd have to fight harder to get out of it, because I was of the opinion, if I just fight harder a little bit longer, I'll be better. And the reason for my depression was I was a stubborn male who didn't want to deal with the issues or trauma from his past or the emotions attached to it. I was like, I'm tough, I'll deal with it, I'm fine. And it just wore me down. And the more I got worn down, the harder it was for me to deal with my emotional challenges. And I was very lucky. I've got a very, very warm and loving family, a great support system. I got married when I was 40, so an amazing wife, and we've still, got this amazing relationship. But it all stemmed back from a childhood trauma. When I was 6 and 7 years old, I had been sexually abused by a neighbour on numerous occasions. And I sort of explained to people that when you're that age, you don't have the emotional capacity to deal with it. And so for me, this is my perspective, whatever your heart, soul, mind, whatever it does, it takes that trauma and the anguish attached to it and the emotions attached to it, and it just pushes to one side. And then in my family life, I had this amazing support system with my parents and family. And I got through my childhood really quite smoothly. And then in my late teens, early 20s, all of a sudden, all those emotions attached to my trauma and all those memories start to really filter through. And of course, by that stage, you've got this community social persona that you're a bloke and you shouldn't show weaknesses and you shouldn't show your emotions. So I basically buried it. And at the age of 21, I became a police officer. And that just reinforced it even more, that I had to be hard and tough and strong and all that goes along with that male perspective. Like a lot of people in this world, you don't always, I know some people who've never had a trauma, had a loss, had any suffering at all, and have cruised through life pretty well. But that's not the general population. Most people have challenges. And so in my late teens, late 20s, I really started to struggle with this emotional challenges from my past. And then just to throw a bit of petrol on the fire, or gasoline on the fire, whatever term you want to use, I was betrayed by a girl I loved deeply, felt betrayed, and I was rejected. And then 6 months after that, being in the police force, I was involved in a firearms siege, and I was inside a place for 5 hours looking for an armed offender who'd shot and killed someone. And every time I opened the door, it was like, am I next?
Oh, wow.
And so juggling the emotions from my past, plus the rejection and betrayal, and then this whole siege situation, it just was a perfect storm. And I just built up this big wall and just struggled for the next 25 years after that. And so when I actually got to the other end of it, and I went and did a workshop. I was doing my life coaching course at the time. And a mate of mine said to me, you've got this challenge, this issue, and you're not talking about it, aren't you? And I went, yeah. And he said, and it's affecting your life in a really negative way, isn't it? I went, yeah. It's impacting not just you, but your health, your mental health, and your wife, and your relationship, isn't it? I went, yeah. He said, well, don't you think you should do something about it? And all of a sudden it was like, yeah, I should. And then he had this beautiful pregnant pause and just went, it's time. And I thought he reached through the computer and punched me in the chest. My body started vibrating, and every time your body starts vibrating, only way I can describe it. And a week later, I was at a workshop over in the other side of the country. I live in Western Australia, and it's a 5-hour flight to Queensland. And I was at this workshop with 50 men. And at this workshop, I got to deal with my trauma and the emotions attached to it and reclaim my power back, take my power back from my perpetrator. And it was just the most amazing release and energizing and emotional freedom. And during that weekend, there was moments where I had this flash of, oh my God, I actually love who I am as a person. Because I didn't like who I was for 30 years, probably longer. And all of a sudden I had this, I was laying there doing some breathing exercises, and all of a sudden I had this moment, and even now I'm getting choked up, this moment where I could just oh my God. And I was like, I started bawling. I just started crying uncontrollably. And one of the facilitators came up and goes, is everything all right? And I went, I'm just so happy. and he goes, you're in the good space. I'll let you go. And for 10 minutes, I just cried uncontrollably and of pure happiness and joy. So from then on, I had this massive energy to go out and do more workshops and listen to books and do online courses. And I just absorbed everything about mental well-being and wellness and learned all the tools and everything I could. And I started mentoring people. And I was at that point when I started doing some life coaching. I don't want anyone else to suffer like I suffered. And that was it. That was the heartfelt, moment where I wanted to help other people. I didn't want anyone else to suffer like I'd suffered for 50 years, or 30 years, I should say. Mm. From the age of 6 to the age of 50, 44 years of struggling with that trauma. And let people know that there's other ways around it and that you can actually overcome this and live this amazing life and realize that what happened to me is not who I was. That was just what happened to me, not who I am. And once I made that distinction, everything freed up and it was just like, here we go. Here's an amazing journey I can't wait to ride.
Wow.
Hope that wasn't too much.
No, that's what a great story and inspiration as well for other men that might be kind of in the same situation. What is it about men and not opening up our feelings? Is there science behind that, or what's going on with that?
I don't have the science behind it, but I think it's a whole range of things. I think it's generational. I think society has a lot to do with it in regards to society's opinion and belief systems around men. And by the time I got to, I've got a very open-minded and thoughtful parents and father. And I was never judged in any way, shape or form, but definitely I remember being at high school, you had to act or behave a certain way to fit in. You had to put on your different type of masks, those social or emotional masks you wear to fit in. For me, the class clown, the sporty dude, they were my two ones when I was younger. And then as I got older and the depression started to set in more and more, I'm okay mask. If it was something an absolutely great day or an awful day, my standard answer was I'm okay. And for us for men in particular, I think we forget, we don't realize we're wearing the mask and we don't know how to take it off. We need to learn how to take it off, deal with our stuff, and then put it on when we need to put it on. Okay. Right. Put on the professional mask, the joker mask, and understand that it's okay. But take it off when you don't need to use it. Don't use it there all the time.
Well, that can be tiring as well, just having that layers of masks on over time.
Exhausting. Yeah. I did hear a story, and I can't remember who I heard it from, but there was the whole shift into the Industrial Revolution. That was when everything shifted for the generations. Have you heard this story at all?
No, not at all.
So before the Industrial Revolution, Johnny would be home and go out with Dad in the day and learn from Dad. Dad come in and have lunch with the family, and then come in at night and look after the wife and the family and whatnot. And he'd learn from Mum and Dad. And it was always hard to get food on the table. It was always hard to make ends meet. And then the Industrial Revolution happened, and so there was a payoff. You come and work for us 6 days a week, 14-hour days, and we'll give you a regular income, which will put a roof over your head and food on the table and clothes on the back for your family. So Dad disappears. So little Johnny's not learning from Dad anymore. He's not learning from, how Dad interacts with Mum and how they have this relationship. And all of a sudden, Mum is there all the time. Dad's not there because he leaves before he gets up and is in bed before Dad gets home. And then you throw onto that World War I and then World War II about men going off and all of a sudden there's this disconnect about how men should act, because when you go to war, you have to become a certain way to survive. And so from the Industrial Revolution through to the different wars, and then that you've got the whole 70s and then the computer generation and that disconnect, everything's changed. And so from our generation and how we were raised prior to the Industrial Revolution to now, I think that has something to do with men in our masks. And, it's more complicated than that, but that was just And that made sense to me a little bit as well.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, and it tracks as well. Like the more that the father is away, the less like the interaction, the learning, and all that. And it's typically the father's role to be the breadwinner. At least when I was growing up, and that's kind of the tradition.
Yeah.
Now I think things are changing, but still that mental health is kind of there. Wasn't June Men's Mental Health Month?
It was.
Yeah. So I started to see a lot more things, and I'm glad that, there's people like you that are helping people with these issues that we have. But how did you make a business out of that? So you have this passion, you fixed yourself or understood yourself, and now how do you make a business out of that?
It's a long process. I see these people who are, they get on the internet and they say, in 12 months, I've gone from zero to $2.4 million a year. And it's like, well, good on you, mate. That's awesome. But that's not how it works for me. I'm still on my journey, definitely. For me, initially, I was doing free stuff. I was doing free mentoring just because I wanted to help people. And then my wife Kim suggested, this is your time. You should get paid for it. And it's like, yeah, okay. And then I felt awkward about that. And she goes, well, you go to work every day and you help people physically because of your expertise. Do you think you should get paid because of your mental intellect as well and emotional intellect? I went, oh yeah, I suppose I should do. So I had to have a mental shift in myself for that to happen. It was a very small one to start with. So I did some one-on-one mentoring and I didn't have any real plan on where to go. I didn't know. And then bit by bit, men were asking to do a workshop here in this state because you had to basically travel over east to get, travel 4 or 5 hours to go to a men's workshop. And my whole thing was, that's not me. I can't do that. No, I'm not a facilitator in that space. Yeah. And of course, after about 9 months of being badgered by a whole bunch of blokes, I went, well, maybe I can. So again, there was a little mind shift and I ended up running my first workshop. I had some amazing men around me, including Bruce, who had that conversation with me, those 18 months, 2 years earlier. Yeah. So he flew across from Queensland and actually came and supported me on that particular journey. 4 years later, we've run, a dozen men's workshops, so about 3 a year. My wife and I have started doing women's workshops the last 2 years as well. And so the workshops have been the next big thing. And then on top of that, I started my public speaking, my keynote speaking, which I absolutely love doing because I love being in front of a crowd and just inspiring them and just giving them that energy and give them for me, it's all about perspective. You have to see things from a different perspective. And when you get to see that, because I talk about this struggle bubble, if you're in this struggle bubble and you're struggling to get through each day, it's all you're trying to do is get through the next day. You can't see resolutions or reasons behind it. So if you can give them different perspectives about why they may feel, think, behave, or act the way they do, then they go, and all of a sudden they can put a piece of the puzzle together. And that might inspire them to take another piece of the puzzle and put that back together. And all of a sudden understand why I like that and then start moving forward in some way. So I did a little bit of public speaking and then did the workshops. Then I played around with a couple little webinars and it was just basically suck it and see what worked, what didn't. And then we basically just launched in the last 6 months or so a high ticket item, which is a 6-month online program. It's like a workshop, but online with videos, etc. And then obviously some one-on-one with me and my wife, Kim, who does hypnosis and NLP, etc. So it's evolved into this bigger and bigger with different options along the way. And Kim and I do 2-on-2 relationship support as well. So we'll have a husband and wife on one end, and then Kim and I on the other. And we because we know each other so well, and we Kim and I we've had disagreements. We've never had a big fight. We're very calm in the way we go about things. And it doesn't mean we don't get annoyed with each other, but if and I'm just going off tangent here a little bit, but if I feel disconnected to Kim or vice versa, we have this rule: I feel disconnected. Drop what we're doing. Let's go and connect. Go off. Go to the movies. Go to dinner. Go for a walk, hold hands, have a chat, and just feel that connection again. So we just do this 2-on-2 and we just wing it with our relationship support. We call it relationship support, not counseling, because it's not counseling. Right. And just provide a few tools and skills and let people know what we do, and then give them the tools to go off and try things in their space as well. So it's sort of growing. We're still ironing out a lot of bugs, and it's starting to become more financial, but it's not our main bread winner at the moment. Chiropractic is still the supportive thing, but it's growing, which is really great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you take the analogy or look at both the chiropractic business and this new business of yours, you've been in chiropractic for a lot longer than you have been doing this. So it just makes sense that the chiropractor would be further along. So what things have you learned? And it sounds like you've iterated the offering that you've had over time. What did that look like when you went into it? You first do free mentoring, and then all these guys are like, hey, you should do a workshop, do a workshop. So you iterate into doing a workshop. So how did that process go for you in terms of on the business side?
The first thing I had to do was get a product together, had to get the workshop together. And that meant, doing a lot of research. It took me probably 9 or 10 months to really get the way I wanted the workshop to flow. And I had done about 6 workshops. I actually did a workshop to learn how to do workshops as well, as it turns out. That's great. And I didn't agree with everything they did, but I took parts of everything and sort of used different skills and did a bit of research into different processes. Then I found what fitted for me and what worked for me and what was heartfelt for me, basically. What resonated with me and what I thought would be most powerful for men in this space. And so the first thing was basically to get the program going, and then to hit up all those guys who asked for the workshop and say, look, this is going to cost you some money, because we have to pay for a venue and for food, and we have to pay for all the items we need to run the workshop, because we need a speaker and we need tools and props and that sort of stuff to make it work. So you're going to have to, and then obviously the time and skill and workbooks and all that sort of stuff. So it has to, and again, we made it very reasonable initially, because we wanted to make sure we got some men there and to make sure it was like a beta test, really. Yeah. And out of the first workshop, we've still got 3 men who still come back to every workshop and are now leaders in that workshop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the men who do the workshop and they're in a good space, they actually come back and support, and they actually work on the crew. And so those 3 men, and there's a couple more as well who were a little bit later, they can run the workshop without me now. So one of the great things I've learned along the way is you have to empower them to grow and be more. So in the first 3 or 4 workshops, three workshops, I did everything. And I'd get home on Sunday night. I was exhausted after 3.5 days of doing that. And one of the senior guys, who's my 2IC, a guy called Mo, goes, mate, you have to do everything, I went, no, I don't. And I remember saying to my wife, I'm going to pass these other things off to the guys. She goes, but it's your workshop. It's like, no, it's our workshop. It's not my workshop, it's our workshop. And I say that every single workshop, it's not mine, it's ours. And seeing those men lead, not just in that space, but now in society, is just amazing. And I'm going to mention one of the guys' names now. His name's Stu. And Stu's become a really good mate. He was a patient of mine initially. And he had the Joker about, he had that Joker mask on, would never speak in front of everyone, quite a shy guy, but knew how to deflect with humor. Very funny guy, lovely bloke. And I remember him saying, I was driving to the workshop because I was doing a favor for you. And I got down there and almost turned around because it's like I didn't want to be there. He could now run the workshop without me. And he's a Man U supporter, and he actually he's the president of the West Australian Man U Supporters Club. When they were over last time, he got up and spoke in front of 600 people at the casino, at the function. He's gone from someone who would not be seen. He did interviews with international sports casting, news sort of thing. And so all of a sudden he's gone from this bloke who wouldn't speak up and wouldn't show up to this bloke who is now leading in other areas. And that's the power of that ripple effect that we talk about.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And so what type of kind of pleasant surprises have come with having this heart-led business and that over the last however many years?
Yeah, 4 years or so. I think it's, that's a good question. I think it's those moments. Mm-hmm. It's those moments like Stu. And, there's been quite a few where men, both the wife and the husband have done the 2 different workshops. Mm. We had one gentleman who lost his son to suicide. His wife said to us, a little bit later on. She goes, "Thank you very much. I've got my husband back."
Mm.
It's those moments where you can see the relationships shifted, the men have shifted, the family shifted, and it's those special things. And then it's the community that you create as well. We have these little online groups where they stay connected, and they will throw in a comment and say, "Look, I'm struggling today, guys," or "I've had a win today, guys," or I need some advice today. So creating those little communities as well and seeing that support grow within these are the ones which is again a ripple effect. Those are the moments which you really cherish. But I think the biggest one is seeing the men's faces and their smiles from seeing them on day one of a workshop and seeing them on day 3. That's the one that really gets you back to do those workshops, because it's just this massive heartfelt change. They rock up on day 1 going, "Oh, hi, how are you?" Or on day 3, it's like, "Give me a hug," sort of thing. So, "Hug me." It's like, "You want to hug a man?" "Yeah, hug me," sort of thing. So, which we incorporate through the workshop, but it's a different attitude, different mindset from day 1 to day 3.
Yeah, no, that must be amazing just to see that transformation in such a short period of time, but then also see the growth over time as well. On the flip side of that, if this was purely a profit-led business, what do you think would be different if all you were looking for is just the bottom line?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. I don't know. That's a really good question. If it was just profit-led,
Would there even be a business?
I don't know if you could do it if it was profit-led.
Yeah.
Honestly, don't know if you could, because if you don't have the connection with the men and the women, if you don't have the connection when they don't trust you and they don't believe in what you're doing, then it's not going to work. It wouldn't work. I think that's the bottom. It wouldn't work. Because the men who, and I'm talking from the man's perspective, because I've done more men's workshops than women's workshops, and I'm more of a support system for Kim. But the men, I usually know who I am by the time we get to the workshop. They see me on my Facebook pages and LinkedIn and that sort of stuff. And they see the videos I produce. They see that we do these workshops, and they sort of know me. And before they, they'll reach out and I'll have a chat to them. I'll have a free chat to them initially and go, what's your struggles? So I don't think if it was just profit-led, I don't think it'd work. I just don't think it could.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it. Because it's so much of you is in that. And now you're transitioning or even just transforming others to be able to do what you're doing as well. And yeah, like you said, I don't think it would be a profit-led business at all.
Yeah, I think it could. One of the big things I have learned on the journey is, I'll have family members ring up, wives or parents saying, my son or my husband or my brother or whoever is struggling, and I want him to come to the workshop, or I want him to do some work with you, or I want him to do a program.
Yeah.
And we'll have them come along, and they're there, but they're not there. And when that happens, it just doesn't work. And we learnt this lesson really hard a couple of years ago, where we had a workshop with we don't keep it to about 8 or 9 men. We keep it really intimate in regards to the participants, and about 10 mentors, team members. And I think we had 7 men this particular workshop, and 5 were sort of encouraged to go. And it was a disaster. Worst workshop we ever had. It was just hard work from go to woe. These men kicked up their back every opportunity they had, going, "I'm not doing that. I'm not interested in that." And it just made it difficult for everybody else. And so at that moment, we had a mind shift change again. And we just went, you know what? Unless you want to be here, it's not going to work for you. And as soon as we changed that, and the last 2 workshops, at the last workshop, one of the guys said to one of the mentors said, "It's like a cool calmness to it. What's going on? This is a bit creepy. This is not normal." It just had this calmness to it. Even though it was intense, it had an intense calmness, if that makes sense. Because the processes are still quite intense at different times, but the men were just calm about it, because it's like, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do to move forward. This is what I have to do to be better. So they knew they had to do it, and they were just calm about it. Was it intense still? Yes, but they were just like, let's do this.
Wow.
And so that was a big shift. And as soon as we realized that had to happen, then the business shifted again.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And when I had my fitness business, whenever somebody would say, "Oh, I want to buy personal training for my wife or my husband or whatever," like, no, they need to come in for a consultation first. Like, I'm not, that never ends well. It sounds like you had that same experience.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, cool. Well, Brett, I want to thank you for being on the show today. But how can some of our listeners find out more about what you're doing and connect with you? What's the best way?
That'd be awesome. Probably Facebook is probably the easiest way, which is Dr. Brett Dellar. I'm sure you've got some links there to put up if you need to. So Dr. Brett Dellar on Facebook, and then I've got the website, which is the Momentum Revolution. And within that, we've also got Momentum in that as well, which is the female version of the Momentum stuff. And it's all on there. So they're the two main spaces you can get. And I've got emails, got phone numbers on there. So feel free to reach out. Always happy to have a chat, support in any way I can, because we all need that support and that little bit of a leg up sometimes. You know, one of my favorite, I've got two favorite sayings at the moment. The first one is nothing changes unless you change what you do. And the other one is the healing that you're looking for is in the space with most resistance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So those two, you know, and for me, it's like I resisted going into a particular area in regards to my mental well-being for a long time. And if I just pushed into that, I would have been a lot further advanced than what I am now.
That's great advice. And for business people, as well as those that have some mental health issues that they want to address as well. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Brett, thank you so much for
Excellent.
being on the show today. I really appreciate the wisdom that you shared and the stories that you shared as well.
I really appreciate you for letting me have the opportunity today to come and speak. So always love having a chat, as you can tell, and I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks to the listeners for listening in.
No worries. Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for listening or watching the show today. We really do appreciate it. And make sure you're checking out what Brett is doing, and we'll provide all of those links into the show notes. So make sure you're checking that out and connecting with Brett. I know our show guests always love when you're connecting with them. So make sure you're doing that. And then if you could do me a favor and give this show a rating and review, that helps spread the word about the Heart-Led Business Show and help more heart-led business owners. So until next time, lead with your heart.
You've been listening to the Heart-Led Business Show, hosted by Tom Jacobs. Join us next time for another inspiring journey into the heart of business.